What is going on, guys? It's Jack here, stage name Ninjak, and we have some exciting content for you today. We actually have a guest speaker with us today. This is a friend of mine. I actually met them at my current job. They're my mentor, and they started a Pokemon Draft League, invited me in last season, had a ton of fun with that, and they've actually, by the time you see this, you'll know that they've started a second season, and we're very excited about that. So why don't you introduce yourself and tell them who you are?
Sure. Hi guys, my name's Joe. Like Jack, I've been playing a little while, but not terribly long in the competitive scene. I've been playing Pokemon games since I was a kid, and I really enjoyed it. And since Gen 8 came around, I've enjoyed being able to get more into competitive and do
Mm-hmm.
things a lot easier. But like Jack said, started a draft league mid 2020. Had a lot of fun with that. Kind of the big difference between me and Jack is that I beat him in the finals of that draft league.
I figured
I
you'd
don't know
bring
if you
that
wanted me
up.
to say that, but too bad I did. And the next draft league we're doing is going to be a lot of fun. We actually have our match coming up this week, so we'll see how that one goes.
Yeah, it's going to be time for a little bit of payback. So in the last league, we had this interesting format where depending on your home away situation, it was doubles or singles. And the way it fell out, my Joe had the first seed, so I was forced to play doubles in the championship, and they were great matches. But my format was singles, so that's kind of what I built my team around. So I feel like I'm ready for vengeance because this next league is only 6v6 singles. So I'm excited about that.
I'd like to think I've gotten a little better at singles since then, but
Certainly true. Certainly
when we
true.
played our singles match during the season, oh, it was bad. Jack crushed me. I think 3-0. We were playing just 3v3 in singles, but yeah, 3-0. It
Yeah,
was bad.
that was. I came at him with the unexpected strategy of just pure walls, basically. And it was very satisfying. I don't do stall on video because I know you guys are not normally going to like that. I think it's a very fun strategy. So that's kind of what I did to Joe. So he had to suffer through that for one fight.
Yeah, as it turns out, watching your Cinderace die to toxic spikes for 45 minutes is not fun. Just saying.
It's quite satisfying for me.
Yeah.
But anyways, this video is not about that, but that is fun stuff. This video is about how to team build for beginners. All right, you're new to Showdown. I'll go ahead and tell you, I've been playing Showdown for almost 2 weeks now. Now, I had a background in Pokemon, so I didn't know nothing, but as far as Showdown goes, I'm still quite green. And I found this system from Jamvad, actually, from his videos, for how to build a team yourself. I thought it was a great system, and I reached out to him, asked him if he minded if I used it in my video, and he said that was great. And so I thought I'd bring in Joe because he is an incredible team builder. As far as knowledge goes, he definitely has a broader understanding than I do. So I thought I'd bring him in, and we can build a team here. So step one, as you can see over here, is identify the goal. And in our case, the goal is to build a team around Nidoking. Two reasons for this. One, I've been playing a lot of battles and I've seen a fair amount of Nidoking, and it just kind of surprised me because he wasn't something I expected to be in the OU tier. And two, as previously mentioned, we have a draft league going on, and it's a monotype draft league. So if you haven't seen that video, go check it out now. You need to. This is a league like no other. But I put that aside. Go check it out. I am the poison type in the monotype league. So I want to know what a OU poison type does because clearly this thing is good competitively. But I've not used it before. So I thought this is the perfect goal for step one, build a Nidoking. And I actually just realized, pretend none of you saw the set that's already in here. Oops. That's fine though. It's fine because you'll see how I got it and you're like, okay, well, that's quite simple. So no set. Yeah. Joe, do you have any thoughts on Nidoking?
All I really know about Nidoking is that typically it attacks specially. It's got sheer force, which is kind of cool. And I'm also excited to see how we're going to do this because, as previously mentioned, we're playing each other this week. So, you know, looking into Nidoking's strengths and weaknesses seems like something I should really be doing on my own, but this is a great excuse to go ahead and do it.
I definitely debated whether I wanted to bring in Joe on how to build a team around a thing that is very good in my type, but he has a lot of experience, and I was like, you know what? I mean, it's not like he doesn't know Nidoking exists, so I figure why not? So, step one, we have identified our goal, and it is Nidoking. Now you might be wondering, that's great, Jack, but we got a Nidoking with no item. Normally you would have like whatever the base ability is, and I don't know how to build this. Have I got the answer for you guys? This is for beginners, okay? We're not going to do crazy analysis. We're going to open up a new tab here, go to Smogon University for Nidoking. I'm going to pick the SS link, that's Sword Shield, so that's the meta we're currently playing in. And I'm going to scroll down. Oh, look at that. Strategies, format, OU. That's what we're looking for. They define him as a wall breaker in this particular set, and they have a pre-built Nidoking. Smogon, if you don't know about it, is something you should definitely be using when building your teams, unless you have a ton of experience on your own, because they have a ton of sets basically pre-built that anyone can take. So I clicked export, I copied it. I'm going to come over here to import. We're going to delete this, and I'm just going to copy and paste, click save, boom. We have a Nidoking. We got our first Mon. Congrats to us. So let's take a quick look here. They have an item of Life Orb with the ability Sheer Force. For those of you that don't know, Sheer Force takes moves that have secondary effects, so things that like poison, burn, paralyze, those kinds of effects, or flinch, and it increases their power by 30%, but it gets rid of the effect. So this Nidoking with Sheer Force, when it clicks Flamethrower, you will never get a burn. Don't try to get a burn, it will not happen. But the Flamethrower is stronger and has an interesting interaction with Life Orb, which also boosts the damage of attacks by 30%. Normally, Life Orb will boost by 30% and you lose 1/10 of your health. If Sheer Force is active, so in this case, let's use Flamethrower again. Sheer Force activates, you're not going to get a burn, that's considered a secondary effect. So no burn, increased power. Sheer Force will actually also nullify the Life Orb damage. So you won't take damage when you get Life Orb attacks, assuming you're activating Sheer Force on the move. If you're using, for example, Earthquake, which has no secondary effect, you will take Life Orb damage, so just so you know that. So that is why this is meta. Life Orb plus Sheer Force gives you damage times 1.3 times 1.3, and you don't take damage back. What are your thoughts around the moveset, Joe? The Sludge Wave, Earth Power, Flamethrower, and Substitute that it brought in.
One thing about Smogon real quick before we jump onto the moveset. In general, checking out Smogon whenever you're debating building a Pokemon is good anyway, because like as Jack mentioned, they have a bunch of different sets. But even if you think you know what you want your moveset to be, sometimes you'll just forget a move exists. And
That's very true.
It's worth jumping in and taking a quick look. Like if you're playing in Sword and Shield and not in Showdown, it's worth just taking a quick look and saying, oh, wait, that Pokemon learns this. I forgot about that. And that can help you with building movesets, particularly as a beginner in general. I say completely from experience as a beginner. In regards to the moveset, you've got both of your stab moves for solid coverage. You said Flamethrower was the third one, right?
Yes.
Flamethrower is going to be good coverage against those steel types that resist your poison stab, which is good. Particularly Corvinite is a concern. But Substitute's just a good utility move. I think it's a good set to start with. Nidoking has a bunch of different other coverage moves. Mm-hmm. So if you want to modify it, you can do things like adding Ice Beam or adding Thunderbolt or things like that. But this is a good starting set, at least to begin with.
Yeah. So Nidoking's very versatile, but this is the set that they've recommended. We're going to keep this simple, guys, because team building is not actually that challenging. We're going to get to it, but basically the hard part is having the confidence to accept that something is a rough draft. So we're going to move to step 2 here, which is check what common strategies would stop your goal. So our goal is to use Nidoking. We want Nidoking to be able to come in and click super strong hitting attacks. Now you might be asking, how do I know what stops it? Well, we're going to start very simple. Type advantages and disadvantages. Nidoking is a poison type and he's a ground type. So we're going to look for things that probably run super effective moves against our Nidoking. And as another simplification, if you don't know what's going to run a super effective move, just look at its type, okay? Psychic types, probably a problem. I'm thinking things like Alakazam, very fast. They're going to hit you hard. You're not going to get a chance. Ground type, water's a problem. Grass is neutral because of poison type. But we're looking at these type advantages and disadvantages. So what you can do, because Pokemon Showdown is awesome, add a Pokemon, and you see this OU tier, we're literally just going to start scrolling down and looking and saying what things are super effective and what things aren't. So right off the bat, Barraskewda. Our Nidoking does not want to take a frequently I know that Barraskewda are choice banned, but even if they weren't, our Nidoking is not going to want to take anything from a Barraskewda. It's a water type, it's got stab, it's very fast, 136 speed, 123 attack. It's going to take our Nidoking out. So Barraskewda is something to keep in mind. Gonna keep going here. Nope, nope, nope. Dragonite, no. Okay. Excadrill, because Earth, talking about the move Earthquake that Excadrill would use. Ground doesn't resist ground, so if it uses Earthquake on your Nidoking, it's gonna hurt. So we gotta watch out for Excadrill. Ferrothorn has a grass type move, but we're running a flamethrower. Ferrothorn is slower than us. We don't really have to consider it. Garchomp, another ground type that we have to be a little bit worried about. Not Hawlucha, not really scared of Heatran. Hippowdon, again, ground type. So I don't know if you're picking up on a theme here. Ground types and water types so far are the main things that we're scared of. Let's keep that in mind. Landorus, Therian form. Gonna be another ground type. Latios, psychic type. Okay, so we gotta watch out for psychics. Keeping it going, we'll speed up a little bit. Pelipper, water type. I happen to know Rillaboom can be a problem because Choice Band Grassy Glide is not an uncommon set. So even though it's not super effective per se, I happen to know that Rillaboom is a problem. But see, if you don't know these things, guys, that's fine. You will learn as you go, and as we'll get to it, you make adjustments. We're building a rough draft. Okay, the Slowbros, or Slowbro, Slowking, either form, they're all psychic types, so that's something that could be an issue. Swampert, Tapu Fini, some more water types. And Toxapex, water type. And I think we're almost there. Urshifu, Rapid Strike, another water type. And we'll look into UUBL, which is, so OU's overused, UU is underused, but then the BL is borderline because they're underused, but they're not underused, so they made this goofy category in between. Blacephalon, I just happen to know is a very powerful attacker that's very fast. It's pretty quick, 107 base speed, so Blacephalon could be an issue. And then Latias. Oh, and Weavile because ice type against ground. So, quick recap. Did you guys see what I did there? I literally scrolled down and pretty much just looked at the Pokemon's types. If you don't know the types, just Google Pokemon type, super effective moves, or something like that, and you'll get a bunch of charts. So, what are your thoughts, Joe? We're weak to ground, we're weak to water, and we're weak to psychic are the main threats that we're seeing. And I saw a lot of ground threats in that list. So, what are your thoughts?
Just to kind of support what you were saying, if you the website that I use for checking Pokemon is Cerebu.net, but there are plenty of websites out there. You can just click on the Pokemon, and it will tell you everything you want to know about that Pokemon, weaknesses, resistances, whatever.
That's a good resource.
In regards to one of the other things that you were mentioning, Jack, is there was one point you were talking about things like Excadrill and Garchomp and Landorus Therian, for example. When you're building these lists, particularly when we're dealing with Nidoking, right? Nidoking has a base speed of 85, and you can see that when you plug it into Showdown. Looking at Excadrill, Excadrill has a base speed of 88. Garchomp has a base speed of 102. Hippowdon is another ground type in that list, but it's got a base speed of 47. So, of those three Pokemon, Excadrill and Garchomp, if built with speed, will outspeed us every time.
Right.
Even if we're max speed investment, because we're not planning on running a Choice Scarf with this set.
Correct.
Hippowdon will not outspeed us, so we don't have to worry about that situation. But just keeping in mind speed tiers when you evaluate if something's a threat or not. Like Excadrill, for example. Excadrill goes down really quickly to a ground type attack.
Yes, it does.
But if it outspeeds us, then we don't get that ground attack off because it kills us before we get the chance to kill it.
Right.
So that's just something important to kind of keep in mind is that speed tiers matter a lot. And that's actually a really easy stat just to keep up with. Like,
Yes.
keeping up with every single stat is kind of tricky, but if you just look at speed and understand it's going to go before me, that's probably something important when you're team
Right.
building.
That's probably if you were going to learn one stat, learn the speed. That's going to be your most impactful in the matches. And you can see Smogon makes it easy here. They're literally listed in a row right here. You know, Barrascuda 136, Blissey 55. So use that. Use that information. That's a good point, Joe. So, step 3, we've checked what strategies might stop us, which are basically, in our case, we're looking at types. Step 3, what Pokemon can help us prevent those things from stopping us? How do we stop these ground types and these water types and psychic types from just wiping out our Nidoking? And it's actually a good idea to introduce another concept here. I recommend this for all beginner teams. It's called a balance team, and I recommend it because it's forgiving, but it doesn't take forever like full stall. A balance team at its most, we're just going to go very basic here. You're going to have 3 defensive Pokemon, things that are meant to not necessarily take kills, but to stop the opponent from taking kills, and then 3 offensive Pokemon. Nidoking is under the offensive. That's why it's called a wall breaker. It attacks, but it doesn't take hits well. So my gut, right off the bat, a lot of those things that I listed as problems are offensive. Barrascuda, Excadrill, Garchomp, Latios, Latias. Those are things. Landorus. Those are things that are attacking. So I'm thinking, what kind of things are defensive that are going to help us not lose to those Pokemon? Does anything come to your mind, Joe, for what we could use defensively? And guys, we're winging this, just so you know.
Yeah, yeah. When dealing with defense, in addition to looking for Pokemon that are defensively viable, you also want to look for things that are kind of resistant to the type that you're dealing with.
Mm-hmm.
So, for example, one of the things that we're really not great against is water types, and there are lots of them as we kind of went through. Also, ground types. You know what handles those really well? Rillaboom handles those really well. It can take hits decently well, but also, as previously mentioned, it dishes hits out super hard, particularly with certain sets. So Rillaboom is a solid option to deal with, like your Barrascuda, for example. Barrascuda, it's got Choice Band Water move. That's great, but Grassy Glide outspeeds as long as terrain's in play. So, and that Barrascuda probably doesn't take a Grassy Glide too well.
So I love this suggestion because this gives us an offensive answer to them. So let's say we've got Nidoking in and we're expecting our opponent to swap. We can swap in tandem, and now they're on their back foot again. If they went into Barrascuda while our Rillaboom came in and set Grassy Terrain with Grassy Surge, Barrascuda is not staying unless it's dumb. So I happen to know this particular common set for Rillaboom. But again, if you don't know, just pick the Pokemon, go to Smogon, and trust it. So Grassy Glide always. Woodhammer is actually a pretty good move on these. U-Turn is good, and Knockoff. Knockoff is great for if you know your opponent's going to swap. For example, let's say you lead Rilla and they lead Barrascuda. Well, they're almost certainly not staying in. You can click Knockoff so whatever comes in loses its item. You can click U-Turn for positional advantage. And Woodhammer is there as a way to deal a ton of damage should you just want pure damage. And the way you want to run these is full attack and full speed. So Grassy Glide, if you don't know, it's a priority move in grassy terrain. So you actually you use Adamant as your nature. You want to increase attack and decrease special attack because the speed is less important since you're using priority moves. And if you notice, fast band, guess spread. So we click this, builds it for us. So I'm a big fan of these two paired together, Nidoking with Rillaboom. I am thinking...
Sorry, one more thing I want to say about Rillaboom. If you don't want to run Woodhammer, there are lots of other options for coverage moves. As it turns out, Nidoking is weak to 4 types: water, ice, psychic, and ground. If you swap Woodhammer for superpower, not saying we necessarily need to do that here, but if you were to swap it for either superpower or... All right, another thing with Rillaboom is if you don't want to run Woodhammer as another grass attacking move, it's very, very good because it's strong and it's stab for Rillaboom. But also, if you run Superpower or Drain Punch instead as a coverage move, it covers every single one of Nidoking's weaknesses because Nidoking is weak to water, ice, psychic, and ground. So for water and ground, you've got Grassy Glide to take care of those. You've got Knockoff and U-Turn to take care of psychic types, and you've got Superpower or Drain Punch for your ice types. So Rillaboom's a great partner for Nidoking because it can cover all of its weaknesses if you want it to.
I actually agree with that because I've been using, if you guys have been watching my videos, again, if you haven't, go check them out. I have been using Woodhammer, and there have been multiple cases where I would love, love, love to have superpower so that when Heatran swaps in thinking he's cute, I can delete it. Or it's really good into Corviknight or Mandibuzz. So I actually am going to, I like that suggestion. I'm going to run superpower and forego Woodhammer for now. So now we have two of our offensive core, and this is actually just kind of something I like. I really enjoy setup Pokemon. I don't know why. I just think they're very fun. So I'm trying to think of defensive cores. I'll admit, I have something in mind. I'm thinking of a defensive core that is set up, and it's actually something I've been running, so hopefully that's not too boring for you guys. Nidoking's weak to ground types. Well, you know what's immune to ground? Flying type. And you know what resists? Oh, no, actually, that's not true. I always mess this up. I always think steel resists water, but it actually doesn't. But nonetheless, it is not super effective against steel. Psychic or steel resists psychic, and it doesn't cover the ice type perfectly, but we have other Pokemon. I am talking about the one, the only Corvinite. So Corviknight, I think, is a fantastic defensive pairing because if you're expecting a ground move, you can just swap into Corviknight every single time. If you're expecting a water move, a lot of times Corviknight can take those pretty well. And the set that I've actually been running is a leftovers pressure Corviknight using Substitute, then Bulk Up, then Roost, and Brave Bird. And you actually want to run it specially defensive. And you guys see it has a guess spread. I just clicked that and said that's good. I accepted it. Highly recommend using this if you're new. And now we have a special bulky Corviknight, which is I have found to be very useful. And then you have bulk up. So you get bulk up going, and you have a very serious wall for your opponent to deal with. What are your thoughts on this Pokemon, Joe, and the moveset I just kind of threw out here?
So Corviknight was actually one of the Pokemon that I had picked as well. Yeah, as you mentioned, Corviknight resists Psychic and is immune to ground, which is super nice for covering Nidoking. On top of that, Corviknight actually has other moves if you don't want to run Brave Bird, or if you playtest and decide and realize, I'm running into Ice types more often, and Brave Bird isn't really doing it for me. You can sub in Body Press or Iron Head into that slot instead,
right? And
it takes care of those perfectly well. Yeah, Corviknight's super versatile, super bulky, and can handle a lot of threats that Nidoking's concerned about. So I think Corviknight's a great suggestion.
Yeah, Corviknight, you guys have seen. I've used it a lot. Offline, I've had a number of games go to Corviknight sweeps, and actually a current meta is a Cosmic Power Jirachi, which boosts both of its defenses with stored power. Well, I have learned Corviknight beats that by getting behind a substitute and bulking up in tandem. And because of pressure and leftovers, you can just keep clicking sub while they use stored power. They will actually run out of stored power before they can beat you, and then you have a fully set up Corviknight and they got nothing. So just a little bit of knowledge of the current meta and something that's been running around. Corviknight's a great option right now. So now we have two offensive things, one defensive core. Now we're going to think, okay, like Joe mentioned, we're somewhat weak to ice still. Actually, we're very weak. We have 3 Pokemon weak to ice right now. So we probably should find a defensive Pokemon that is going to be able to take an ice type attack. And do you have any ideas for what we could do for that, Joe?
I think I know where you're planning on going with it too, but we might have picked very similar teams. Pokemon. So Corviknight, we built specially bulky, something we can use that's physically bulky or specially bulky, depending on what we want to do, that actually resists a lot of the types that we're concerned about with Nidoking specifically, is either Slowbro or Slowking. Depending on if you want a physical defender, you use Slowbro. If you want a special defender, you use Slowking.
Okay.
But some of the things that we're weak to are water and psychic and ice. And, what's better to resist those things than a water psychic type? Slowbro can handle those things really well, and even if it's not, a definitive member of the team, it's something at least to consider when building your team. It also has access to Regenerator, which is super useful when you're swapping things in and out to be able to recover that health.
Yes.
It has recovery and slack off. It's got good coverage moves. It can also, I think it gets, if I remember correctly, it gets access to Thunderwave as well, so you can get some speed control in with that. There's a lot of good things to do with Slowbro.
So I like the Slowbro suggestion, and actually, believe it or not, I didn't know what the next thing was going to be. I was genuinely asking. I like Slowbro because, like,
I was just gonna say, I did a little bit of prep last night and kind of put together like an idea for a team in about 15 minutes, and that's kind of what I'm going off for as notes. But Jack and I have not talked about this ahead of time, so I'm curious where this is gonna go to.
I wanted it to be kind of organic so you guys can see the process. So I like Slowbro because we need a physical wall, and Corvinite is our special wall. Interestingly, a lot of the ice types I've run into tend to be special, but they also tend to be choice itemed. So I'm thinking Specs Kyurem, Scarf Kyurem. I'll admit that's pretty much all I'm thinking because that's what I've been running into lately. So Slowbro resists those moves. If they were to be able to change moves, that could be a problem, but generally they're not able to. And the reason I point that out is Slowbro, you'd want to run physically bulky most of the time. So, I haven't given it a move set. I was like, where's my handy guest spread option? You typically want to run Teleport. Future Sight's a great move. Scald is extremely common. As far as the last move, what are you thinking, Joe? I kind of like Thunderwave, I'm not going to lie.
Thunderwave's good, Slack Off's good. That's actually one thing I didn't mention with Slowbro was that Slowbro and Slowking are both phenomenal pivot Pokemon because you can send them in and then you can teleport out. And they're bulky enough to where they're probably going to be able to take a hit. They were going to recover all the damage they took when they regenerate on swap. And teleport being a negative priority switching move allows you to see exactly what your opponent's doing and adjust accordingly. So even though Slowbro kind of gives up its turn, having teleport is so good because you could, if they use U-turn or Volt Switch, for example, in an attempt to kind of keep pressure up and switch their Pokemon out, you can see that and then react, as opposed to having to react by switching at the start of your next turn.
Right, and I like this too because a common item, the item I actually put on Slowbro, is actually Rocky Helmet. Because what you do is you swap it into expected physical attacks. Your opponent takes some damage. They're probably pivoting at that point. If they're weak to Future Sight, you can fire that off. If not, you can click Teleport so that when they swap, like Joe mentioned, you keep up your initiative, basically. You get the field advantage to force them into an awkward spot again. So I really like the Slowbro. And I've not used it, so I'm actually pretty excited to test this thing out.
Also, Slowbro gets access to Scald, which is one of my favorite moves in the game.
Having chances to burn is very big, which makes it even more of a physical Pokemon check. All right, we have 4 Mons. We got 2 offensive, 2 defensive. I really like the team so far. Now I'm starting to get to that point where it's like, I don't know what to add. There's so many factors. This is where we're going to try to avoid perfection paralysis and just just pick things. So I am looking at this, Joe. I will admit, I really like, I was going to say Toxapex because I happen to be a big fan of that Pokemon. But Toxapex might not be the answer because Earthquake into Nidoking, Toxapex doesn't want that. Nor does it want Psychic types. But we do have Corviknight and Slowbro. Actually, Toxapex could be a good option here. Because Toxapex gets Toxic Spikes, and if we can set spikes on the field and start to wear our opponents out with poison, Nidoking can start just taking KOs with every single attack. What do you think? Am I missing something?
Yeah, no, it's definitely true. In Toxapex, one of the good things about Toxapex is you can kind of build it whatever defensively you want. Because it's so good, especially and physically bulky. So depending on, in general, with team building with Toxapex, if you need something physical, you can build it physical. If you need something special, you can build it special. It also gets access to Scald, which is, as I've mentioned, is one of my favorite moves. But yeah, Toxic Spikes can provide a lot of a lot of pressure on your opponent. It can put a lot of pressure on your opponent because they can't switch as freely, or they have a poison type to negate it. But
Although I have to confess, I did just realize an error. If I pick Toxapex, we don't have a terrain clearing user, and our final Pokemon's going to be offensive. I don't have Defog on this team yet.
Yeah, one of the other problems with Toxapex actually is the fact that you've got a lot of things that are weak to Earthquake too. Like Corviknight's
Yes.
not weak to Earthquake, but if your opponent predicts that you're roosting, then Corviknight's probably going down pretty fast.
Yeah, I like the idea, but now I like it less. So what are some common? Ooh. Joe, I'm excited. I've liked this Pokemon and wanted to use it. What if we use Mandibuzz?
Mandibuzz was one of the. So I had two Pokemon of the same type that fit into a slot that I was going to suggest, depending on what you wanted to do.
Okay.
So my two options. I love dark flying types in this case because they're immune to two of Nidoking's weaknesses, meaning they're great subs. So the two options I had for dark flying types were Mandibuzz and Galarian Moltres.
Okay.
Yeah, so it depends on what you want because Mandibuzz is a physically defensive wall and Moltres is a specially defensive wall. So you have to make a decision for which one you want.
Galarian Moltres?
Galarian Moltres.
Oh. I'm thinking Zapdos for some reason.
Yeah, no. Galarian Moltres, the flying dark type
Yes.
with access to dark type Rock Slide, which is super great. It's a pretty solid special wall, but I don't think it gets access to Defog, which is problematic.
Yeah, I think we probably want Mandibuzz here.
And no, I think Mandibuzz is a great play. One of the other good things about Mandibuzz is it gets access to Overcoat. So that's if you want to use that ability. Overcoat's going to allow you to avoid weather and also avoid pesky powder moves from things like Amoonguss.
I think I like that because I'm not weak armor is not what we want because we're not offensive. Big pecs, that just does not come up very often.
No, Overcoat's usually the best ability for Mandibuzz, and if you give it heavy duty boots, you can swap it into rocks with no issue.
Which is exactly what I put on it. You read my mind.
Yep.
So Mandibuzz, Defog. Now I'll be honest, guys. I actually don't know all of what is standard on this, so I'm actually going to do what I said before yet again.
From what I know, Mandibuzz's typically only attacking moves are Foul Play and Brave Bird.
That's what I thought.
It depends on what you want to do with it. Mandibuzz also actually turns into a pretty strong attacker when your opponent has a Swords Dance setup user, because they can try to set up with Swords Dance, and then you just use Foul Play to turn that attack against them.
Which I actually like quite a bit because I have definitely been seeing like Garchomp Swords Dance. I've seen Swords Dance a lot. So, interesting. They actually have a very interesting EV spread. 248 HP, 60 defense with the plus defense nature, 144 special defense, and 56 speed. I'm sure the speed is to outspeed a particular Pokemon. I don't know what it is off the top of my head, but I trust Smogon. And actually, I kind of like that it's a mixed defensive set because we already have a full special defense option and a full defense option, so now we got something in the middle. So I like this set. Foul Play is a great move. All right, this is just me, guys. I have a weird way I like to order my moves, and I like to order them based on... I'm not even going to explain it. I want Roost, then Defog, then Knockoff, and then Foul Play. So
I like to order my moves to where two moves of the same type aren't next to each other, because I've definitely played in the draft league we were talking about earlier. I definitely played a game where I meant to click Parting Shot with an Incineroar, and I clicked Darkest Lariat instead, and was very, very mad at myself for it. So yeah, my preference of ordering is don't put moves of the same type next to each other because they look the same.
I like that. That's funny. Comment in the section below if you have a weird way you like to do your moves. I'm curious what you guys do. For me, I like setup / stat things that I expect to use a lot. I like to be the first, or things I expect to be the first move in a sequence. Now, normally you would think I'd be clicking Defog, but I expect I'll be roosting a lot, which is why I put it there. I don't have any reason for it. It's just how I like it. So, we are on our last Mon. We have our defensive core in Corvinite, Slowbro, Mandibuzz. Now, we have an offensive in Nidoking and Rillaboom. Both of those are not set up offense. Both of those just come in and start clicking moves. As a result, I tend to like having at least one offensive setup option. So, what kind of things could we run, Joe, that have setup capabilities? Because I like them.
Okay, so um, one other thing to consider in this, I don't know how many of you all have heard of this concept, but the idea of typing cores is something on teams that are. It's good to kind of adopt because typing cores cover each other's weaknesses. So there are kind of two main typing cores that a lot of people build around. You've got your Fire, Water, Grass core, the starter cores, and you've got Fairy, Dragon, Steel cores. Because they all cover each other's weakness as well. So right now we have a Steel type, but we don't have a Fairy or a Dragon type. We have a water type, and we have a grass type already. So if we get a fire type here, then we complete that core, which also adds to your coverage options too, because things that grass and water aren't necessarily strong against, fire usually is decent against.
Okay.
Since you want to set up Pokemon, personally, and I think you'll like this idea, I think Volcarona fits this spot.
Yep, perfectly. That's where I was hoping we were headed.
Volcarona. So just so everybody knows, I had about 10 Pokemon that I had picked to kind of complement Nidoking. The exact 5 that I had selected were the 5 other Pokemon that made the team. So I win the team building. Again, we didn't plan this. This was just kind of like, granted, I got to choose half the Pokemon, but still. But yeah, Volcarona is a great Pokemon to put in this spot. On top of the fact it's a setup mon, it also, like, its form of setup is different than normal forms of setup, right? Because, like, Corviknight gets attack and defense. Volcarona gets special attack, special defense, and speed, which actually makes it a great complement to Corviknight because it can handle it boosts the stats that Corviknight doesn't boost. So, and right. Volcarona gets access to a tons of coverage. Like, it gets access to Giga Drain, it gets access to Psychic, it gets access to Fire moves, obviously, it gets access to Bug Buzz if you want it, and also Volcarona is one of Jack's favorite Pokemon, so yes. that helps.
But as I mentioned in the Draft League video introduction, Bug and Poison are my favorite types, and Volcarona, being a Bug type that has made it to the OU tier, holds a special place in my heart. Also, there's just not much more satisfying than getting one Quiver Dance off and then sweeping someone's entire team.
That's very true.
So, here's the team. Nidoking, Rillaboom, Corviknight, Slowbro, Mandibuzz, and Volcarona. Step 5, guys, if you want, is you can do a refining of your first pass. I probably won't in this case, just to try to keep this a little shorter, and also because if you cheat and look at step 7, I'm going to make adjustments eventually anyways. So step 6 is tested out, so I will be playing with this exact team. I'm going to record a number of games with this team, and you guys will get to see me playing with it, and I will show you guys any adjustments that maybe I decide I need to make based on what I'm running into. But as it stands right now, I think we have a pretty good team here. I'm pretty excited to use it. I've been using just one team currently. I was getting a little bored of playing the same game every time, so this is fresh, it's new. I've got 3 new Pokemon for me, so that's exciting. That is pretty much all I've got. Do you have any last thoughts, Joe?
No, I think the team looks pretty good. You've got both your defensive and your offensive core set up. Although Volcarona can kind of function between both. You've got different type advantages. You've covered Nidoking super well, which was the concern. I mean, like, going back to kind of the system, the goal was make a team centered around Nidoking and cover its weaknesses. And so we built the team around Nidoking's weaknesses. And I think you're in a pretty good spot to at least be able to do something with it.
Yes. So I'm
not that you're done by any means.
But, no, not at all. And that's the
initial
point.
Draft is completed.
Right, and that's exactly the point. I'm glad you pointed that out. It's not like once you go in with this and it had to be perfect. No. In fact, it won't be perfect. I can promise you that. But the whole point is to just play and find out how it's not perfect as you go, and then make the adjustments, because then you're learning while you do it. And honestly, it's a lot more fun to play Pokemon than to just sit here and endlessly freak out over threats that you don't know exist because you haven't actually played with the team. So I think we're going to end it there, guys. I hope you enjoyed this video. I was excited to put this out. I think this will be some cool content, a little bit of a change of pace. At the time that this video is planned to be released, you can be expecting another video this coming Monday. Okay, you can expect the first Draft League battle to go up. So be looking forward to that. If you like this video, please subscribe and hit the like button. And yeah, I hope you guys have a great day. See ya.